James. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, it's awesome to see you. I think this is pretty cool what you've been up to and what you're doing.
Thanks. Yeah, I had been meaning to do this for a long time, but life
Yeah.
kind of does its thing.
No, I know. I've known you for a very long time now. I've seen the progress of this for a very long time, and it's kind of amazing. I was looking at all the people that you've interviewed so far, and it's pretty rad. And so, congratulations! Everything's really cool that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. It's definitely my lane. I think it's just really nice to talk to people and I don't know, get we're not getting completely out of the hairdresser space, but I want to just talk to people and learn who they are as human beings and as artists and stuff. And that's kind of always been my goal to highlight. And this is just a kind of a perfect format for that.
Well, I mean, I know you as a hairdresser from a long time ago with the shows and everything. Um, but as you know, this industry there's so many different avenues. There's so many like new avenues you can carve out of it. Um, and it's just cool to see that how you've gravitated towards this, and this is like a thing that only you are doing. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully people want to hear this, like the long format thing. I don't know if that's ultimately in like a young hairdresser's mind to like put on a 2-hour podcast talking
Right.
about whatever, but regardless, I think it needs to exist. I was YouTubing you, right, actually early this morning, and just seeing what was out there with you in it, right? And I know, well, there's quite a lot actually, but it's obviously very much this is a hair technique, this is the company I'm working for, a hair
Yeah.
technique, or it's a backstage fashion week thing, and it's really short blurbs, but none of it really is like, oh, who are you actually, why are you doing this, why are you here, nothing really
Yeah.
personal. So,
Yeah, it's funny too. Is I mean, I started doing hair back in '99, and obviously, a lot has changed, but there's so much of my generation and the generations before, like the Eugenes or the Christians, that it's really hard to track down things that they did. Some of that's good because there's a lot of terrible work out there I've done that I'm happy people don't see. But then at the same time, it's hard to track things down because if it hasn't been scanned into the internet, then it doesn't exist, right? So
yeah. Yeah, and hopefully this is an avenue to uh, maybe immortalize some things, or at least get like track down a bit of history for these guys who kind of came up at a time before everything was being documented quite
yeah,
thoroughly.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the plan. I was remembering, when we were doing those Instagram lives, I had you on, but those were such a technical gamble because you do them and then, one time it would work, one time it would disappear. It was terrible. So you put all this effort and then it'd be gone forever. And I think that happened to me and you the last time. I mean, the live worked, but then it
yeah.
just went to the ether. Um, but I remembered that you were in Costa Rica at that point, and I had completely forgot that you were there. It was like start of COVID.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump into that. I've moved. I've lived in different places over the years. I started doing hair in San Francisco. I lived in New York, all the early kind of Bumble days. I moved to London when I finished doing my assisting, and then I ended up moving back to New York. And then when COVID happened, like years ago, I got a place down in Costa Rica, and I happened to be there before COVID kicked off. And when they started closing borders, I just decided to stay with my family, and then we never came back.
So that was it. That was like, we're gonna live in Costa Rica now. It was done.
Yeah, yeah. There was I think that was kind of always the dream, but it was hard to kind of see that come to life. But then, it's I think it was just a place in my career. I had some changes. I started a company. There was more work that I was doing from an office, which has been a fun challenge. And then also, I have some really cool clients that I travel about a third of what I used to, because I used to be
Mhm.
on the road continuously. And now, because of where I live, when I travel, I try to group as much work together and do it and then come back home. And then that also means sometimes I can't do jobs because I'm not going to fly somewhere just to do one job and fly out. So
Yeah. Was that similarly Kim's dream as well? Were you guys on the same page as far as that went?
yeah. By the way, Kim says hi.
Oh
She
yeah, please tell her I said hi.
But yeah, my wife, Kim, she worked in like art direction companies and stuff in New York, and when we transitioned over to our company Blue and Green, then that's, I mean, it really takes a lot of time and energy, so that becomes the focus. And it's a different lifestyle here. I mean, my son's 6 now, and he goes to school right down the street. My wife, Kim, and my son and I, we surf a lot. So, I mean, we live at the beach, and we have a nice balance where we work very hard, but we enjoy life too.
It seems like it's possible to do there. I think
Yeah.
I'm at this point. I'm about to hit 15 years in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and it is yeah. I don't know if it's getting better, but the things that I love about living here are nature.
Yeah.
You have nature, and also obviously you have access to great food and the arts and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But we just spent 2 weeks in Japan, and it was my first time to Japan, and it was beautiful and clean and
Yeah.
polite, and everybody's got each other in mind, even if it's just cultural. It's just really good. And then you can walk around at 4 in the morning and be safe.
I have to say the culture there is probably the most considerate and thoughtful of other people culture I've ever been around.
It is it's insane. It's insane for that type of culture to exist in this time
Yeah.
of the earth,
I,
right?
I totally agree. It's a very unique place.
So we came home, and we live in East Hollywood, in an apartment, which is where I am right now. And the first thing we come to is our mailbox has been broken into. And not only has our packages been stolen, but they didn't actually steal the whole package. They just rummaged through it and left the cardboard. And so it was just this slap in the face. And you're like, is this, where I want to be? I'm about to be
Yeah.
43. Like,
Yeah.
is this
We're,
where?
we're the same age. I'm turning
Yeah.
45. Yeah.
So, I've thought about Costa Rica, places that you're, close to the equator, and, maybe you can be by some water. I don't surf, but my dream is to be able to surf every day conveniently would be fantastic. So
Yeah.
I'm envious. I'm watching you
There's
with my,
pros and cons. There's pros and cons to everything. I mean, when you're in a city, you have access to culture, museums, people doing like playing music on the street, dance. Those things, you know, are I really appreciate those things. I mean, you can get on a subway in New York and see people performing better than most places in the world, and just having that, and also the energy of other people, around you all the time that are doing things. It's one of the cool things I think about cities is you kind of just gel with people. You're like, oh, cool, you're a photographer. Okay, let's get together. Let's do this. Let's do a project, and I think that's a really cool creative outlet. Um, and we don't have all those things down here. We're very remote. We lose power all the time. We have lots of big bugs and snakes. There's challenges. It's a different thing, but it's just kind of finding what works for you. I always tell people it's definitely not for everyone down here, but it works for us.
what
And,
is your,
yeah, go ahead. I mean,
oh, I was, go ahead.
go ahead, Clint.
No, no, say, so you had a good line of thought.
No, I was just thinking. I mean, our family is we're very involved being outside in nature. We grow we grow some food. We're not very great at it, but we do. And I think it works for us. But at the same time, you know, my wife and I, we both lived in London. We both lived in New York. We both love the city too. So
Mhm.
there's pros and cons.
Well, I'm imagining having a kid, there's probably more pros than cons to just having him grow up in a place where he has access to nature and to play, and maybe you don't have to, you know, worry about him quite as much as you would if you lived in a city. I don't know what the school systems are like, but I'm imagining it's
Oh, it's good. I mean, it's a little bit jarring when I we go to the States and he's not really used to parking lots and like I remember we were in a train station one time and it just not having any idea that there's people out there that would grab him and take him or something. It was kind of he's really kind of naive to that, but
yeah, but probably that's amazing. That's probably for the best to have some like naivety and childlike innocence for
yeah.
now. Yeah, that's great. Do you guys plan or have a strategy to not only expose him but expose yourselves to the arts? Like I'm sure your job does that regardless, but maybe for the family to get to a place to have that cultural kind of.
Yeah, I think I mean, especially if you're a young kid, but also, as adults, especially as hairdressers as well, is that like you have to keep yourself inspired. No one is going to just do it for you. And it's all the other thing I think about, like you actively need to engage. And that doesn't mean it's difficult. It can be fun. I mean, we all love to be inspired. And then the other part of it is it's like a muscle. You have to continuously work on it. So, I still cut hair down here. Um, I cut for trade and for free. I cut people on like stumps and things like that. And it's hysterical because no one cares like what you do anywhere else. So it's usually people saying, "Hey, can you cut my kid's hair?" I'm like, "Okay," you know.
Yeah,
But it's yeah, it's a being creative is like a muscle. You have to constantly exercise it. So, um, sometimes if I'm not finding it in hair, I'll find it in other ways down here. I love being in the yard, working on things. I love making things. I think most hairdressers usually like to work with their hands, and I'm happy if I'm using my hands, whether I'm making a birdhouse or I'm gardening or cutting hair. Um, and then I have a couple really cool clients. Like I work with Tom Brown, which is a probably the biggest creative exercise I get during the year because he really pushes me. Um, but it's important for me to stay sharp on that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it is your responsibility to stay inspired and then also to keep uh, exercising your skills.
tell me about Tom Brown. I'm unfamiliar. I think I am anyway.
Tom Brown, you for some reason I thought you worked with me on a Tom Brown show before. Um, Maybe not. It was, but Tom Brown is. I used to do a lot more shows. Maybe I'll do some more again, but I usually do like 28 shows and do all four cities. Now, the main ones I do is I do Tom Brown. It's in New York, and that one's quite creative. It's very theatrical. It's usually the hair is it really fun, incredible. And then we do Chanel, which is kind of the opposite. It's very Parisian, chic, old school house. So it's an awesome balance between the two. You know.
Yeah. So you're not having him as a client as far as like you're seeing him in Costa Rica, right? I don't want to misunderstand
Oh
that.
no,
Okay.
no. Tom Brown's in New York. Um,
I just didn't know if maybe he was there too, you know, and you had a relationship in Costa Rica. I don't know.
no, we do get a lot of. There's a lot of people like industry people that do pass through, so I see them down here. But no, Tom is in New York, and it's just a really fun show to work on.
Cool.
Really fun. It's usually like a couple weeks of prep work and there's no limit to what we can do. It's crazy.
That's fantastic. I'm gonna try to look back and see what shows that I actually got to work with you. Could have definitely been one of them, but it feels
Yeah.
like a million years ago now.
Yeah.
Uh, it's been a long time. Um, so I came across in my like YouTube travels this morning a document journal video that you did with Kim, and you had made like kind of a headpiece. You had braided like those leaves, and it was really beautiful. It was really cool to
Oh,
see.
thanks.
Yeah, it seemed like it was maybe kind of like a COVID thing.
It was exactly that. The Lucia Peroni, the makeup artist, she contacted me during COVID, and she said, "Look, it's a very open space." Um, During that time, there was a lot going on politically, along with COVID. I think a lot of people were feeling very unsteady and confused. And it was weird because I remember at the beginning of that, I really didn't feel creative at all. I felt like a lack of creativity. Um, and there was so much going on, and like everyone was probably glued to news constantly. And also, you just weren't sure like what was going to happen to the world. It was it was such a crazy time. And then we started to kind of adjust into it, and she proposed this project. I can do anything I want. I'm like, well, we were just going for walks every day, and I had like with my son, and I just started collecting things, and I'm like, well, I'll just make a headpiece. Because I used to do a lot of that in my studio in between jobs. I'd go in my studio and just make things, and 90% of it I would never use, and it ended up getting tossed. But that was just more of though that's what I'm saying with staying creative and exercising that muscle is you make 10 things and 9 of them you throw away, but it's a lot of times it's just continuously getting in that space and playing with things, and it leads you to something new, and that's where you find magic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine that Costa Rica is exposing you to a lot of textures and textiles and stuff that maybe, you were either previously unfamiliar with or hadn't seen very much. So has that been like a nice influence for
Yeah,
you?
it's been a great influence. I mean, it's also, I mean, that was the biggest push to do blue and green, because blue and green we started actually before COVID, but it took a long time to figure out some of the technical parts of making the tablets. But I've worked with, I had a contract with for 6 years with Orbe. I worked with Kerastase. I've worked with L'Oreal. I've worked with a lot of the main hair products over the years, and the I just figured like we really didn't need to have more. But the one thing that drives me crazy is, paddling in the water and having like shampoo bottles float past me, which has happened, you know.
In
And
Costa Rica as well? Or
yeah,
was that yeah.
I remember one time in particular, I was actually in Indonesia paddling, and I had uh, like a Tresemme bottle floating past my head, and nothing against the brand. It's just,
Sure.
like the we have so many companies doing incredible products that we use. Like those products are necessary for what we need to create. But I'm like, we have to find a better way to deal with this. Um, and as you know from the shows, I mean, just from the shows alone, I used to have a hotel room that had boxes to the ceiling with product. And most of that stuff gets tossed because we don't use it. And the companies don't want to send for shipping to have it come pick it up. So a lot of it we were donating over the years. And then I just, seeing where the industry was going, I'm like, man, we got to do something different. We have to do
Yeah.
something different.
It's amazing. Well, we were going to get to that anyway. So I guess that's the genesis of blue and green. But I guess tell me about how you got to like the pellets and how this became what it is now and the idea behind it.
Okay. So Blue and Green was a company that came out of a necessity for performance products that were when they wouldn't make me have a guilty conscience, basically.
Sure.
So what I've done is I've looked at what are the things that are critical for me to use in my work that I need, and how do we create these, and how do we do it plastic free.
Nice.
Um, that part, the plastic free part, is critical for me. But at the end of the day, the products have to perform at the highest level, so
Mhm.
that no one has to make a compromise for an eco version that's not going to perform as well as X, Y, and Z that's sold at the salon. So we
Which
started
has
off.
been the story so far.
Say again.
That has been the story so far. It's like the more natural, the more eco-friendly, the
Yeah.
less it works.
Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite products that I've used over the years are, I mean, there was one product that we've used for a long time in Paris that is one of the biggest company in the industry that's giving hairdressers bloody noses, you know?
That's
And,
insane.
and so that's a problem,
Mhm.
because as all of us, whether you're backstage or in the salon, you're breathing that stuff all the time. That stuff's going on your skin. So that's part of the problem. We gotta make sure that we're using clean ingredients, for the consumer and for the hairdresser. The other thing is, how do we do this plastic free, that is a very, very tricky thing to figure out. And we went completely around the block a few times figuring out, like, can we use psyllium, can we use cork, can we use seaweed, what's the latest technology in food packaging that we can bring over into the beauty industry. And what we ended up doing is going full circle back to aluminum, tin, and paper. And
Wow, interesting. Okay.
yeah, and what's the thing is with aluminum and tin is that it can be recycled infinite amount of times. Where a lot of people, like, I didn't know very much about recycling at all. I still am learning so much. But like plastic, you can't continuously recycle that into a plastic bottle. It kind of, like, it usually has one generated life that goes into something like decking material or a fence, but it can't really go back into the same plastic water bottle.
What a
um,
bummer.
and then when you start having the different components in the top with springs and different types of plastic, it becomes more complicated. And plastic alone, there's so many different types of plastic that not all plants can take it.
Got it.
Bioplastics become an issue that contaminate the recycling process as well. So really, tin and aluminum were what we came back to. So the first thing we did was we made a shampoo and conditioner that was in a small tablet form. So
Hmm.
you take the tablets, you crush one in your hand, you add water to it, it lathers up. And that process took a very long time just to get it right. The lab that we work with specializes in clean beauty, and they're incredible.
Hmm.
But because I come from a background with performance hair products, I was very, very picky about the performance of it. So it took a long time to put it all together.
Had they already had a tablet developed that did that, or was this a novel concept for you guys?
It was. In fact, for your listeners, how most brands work is, if you wanted to have a brand, you can go to a lab and um, basically you can pick, they'll give you 10 shampoos. You pick your shampoo, you pick the packaging, you pick the fragrance, and you can have a brand. All the labs that we contacted didn't want to even touch this idea because it involved innovation. And they don't want to really get into that because they make more money on just selling other stuff. So the lab that we work with was willing to take on the challenge, and it took a really long time. I won't bore you with the details, but it was very hard to do. And we realized that we needed that to launch with, because that was to get people's attention. And we've won a bunch of different awards for the shampoo because of the innovation and the quality. But like, we already have another version of the shampoo and conditioner coming out in like a concentrated form, because it's a little bit easier for consumers to digest that than the tablets.
Got it. Okay, so this would be a liquid concentrate, basically.
Yeah, it
Okay.
comes it comes in a concentrated tube, basically.
Interesting, man. That's really cool. I know I'm into bicycles,
Yeah.
and so I was just watching a thing about, carbon fiber is kind of the holy grail of like, if you got the nicest bike, it's carbon fiber. But the recycling implications of that are
Yeah,
not good.
yeah,
It doesn't degrade the same way even that plastic does, as I understand it. And aluminum's always been this like, oh, it's a cheap aluminum bike, right? But
hmm,
aluminum, as you said, and I just found this out, is continually recyclable. So if
yeah,
they can get the performance of aluminum to where carbon fiber is, and really it's not that far off, uh, it's more about getting the stigma off of aluminum that it seems to be more of the problem than anything else. But it
right.
doesn't end up in a landfill, which is awesome.
I mean, there's some incredible packaging that's being invented right now, using mushroom, cork, all these other things. But really, what's special about aluminum and tin is that uh, I can't remember the exact statistic, but it's like 80% that's in circulation right now has been in circulation for a long time.
Got
So,
it.
and
Okay.
that's a pretty important thing. So you're not mining new material.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So when you get these tablets, I'll definitely order some after this. But when you get
I'll
them,
send you some. That's cool.
I'm stoked about this. Is Does it come in a paper package, or is it tin or aluminum? How do they come?
The tablets come in tin. It's like a little. It comes with 50 tablets, and it can like slip in your pocket.
Okay.
Um, it takes up no space. That was the other thing is, it doesn't. It weighs less. It takes up less space. Easier for transport. Lower carbon. Um, the performance level of it's awesome. It's great for my kit because I travel. We go
Yeah.
on planes. It's a pretty incredible shampoo. Like I really, really enjoy this shampoo. Um, but here's the thing is it's changing people's habits, and the idea of taking a tablet to the shower and crushing it up is a little bit too much of a stretch. Some people love it, and we get them contacting us and saying, this is cool, I need more. And then some people it's a little bit too outside of the norm, and that's okay. But the thing is, what we're doing at Blue and Green is trying to kind of shake up the industry a little bit. We're a tiny company, but we're looking at every product that I want to do. It involves some form of innovation so that we can make it work because we're not using plastic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's so good. I'm excited just for companies to have integrity.
There's
You
a,
know,
there's some other cool companies doing some neat things right now too with using different materials, using less materials, trying some refills. Unfortunately, the refill thing doesn't really work that
Mm,
great because people just buy the refill, and why would they buy the container? But
right, right, totally. Yeah, that makes sense. What maybe I could imagine what it is, but where did blue and green come from? What's the story behind the name?
um, everything is blue and green. Kim and I, we did like a project in the past that we were working with Mission Blue, and the founder is this woman named Sylvia Earle. Fantastic, incredible, inspiring woman who's like been like the leading deep sea diver um, ever, I think. And
Mhm.
she would make comments, or she has a phrase that says, no blue and green, or no green and blue, no you and me," something like that.
Mhm.
And it just kind of always stuck with us. And so
Cool. It's great. It's
yeah.
great. I really like it. Prior to this, I wasn't positive that it was your company. I had a feeling that it was, but yeah, it's really exciting. What else do you guys have in the SKU?
We have a shampoo and conditioner. We have a weekly repair mask. We have an oil that comes in a solid form. That one's been doing really well. We have a dry shampoo launching in January. We have a texturizing dust launching in February. Those are done. And then we have the concentrates launching soon too. We have some other stuff rolling out in the rest of the year. I think the plan is to really produce awesome products that I would need for work, that people can use, and not try to overdo it with too many products where it just becomes confusing and unnecessary.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. The salon I met in Los Angeles is Arnco and Orbe
Yeah,
and Rose, and so it's and we have Reverie there too. But it's between Orbe and Arnco. It's insane
yeah,
how much there is. And I also come from Tony and Guy TG, and that was, I mean, it was crazy. And I was overwhelmed already with that amount. And there was something new that came out, every month. And it's just
yeah.
seems, I understand it as a company that you got to keep, pushing stuff out. But
Yeah, but I this again, this is coming from us, we're a nothing small brand compared to those big hitters. But why? Why do we have to do that? And usually it's because there's a lot of investment behind it. Someone needs to show, your each quarter you have to show that you have some increase in sales, which requires you to keep coming out with new things that get press, and it's a machine. And I mean, I'm speaking pretty frankly about it. That's how it works, and that's why, those brands you mentioned, they're awesome brands. I love working with both of those companies, but they have too much stuff, and it kind of gets to the point where it's like I think it becomes confusing to the consumer, and it gets confusing to the hairdresser.
yeah,
You know,
it seems to always kind of undermine one of the products they already have out. Right. And
yeah.
it's, oh, okay. Well, what
And
about me?
really, at the end of the day, it comes down to sales, and I mean, that's what a product company is meant to sell. So, um, I get it. Let's have this conversation in 10 years from now, but we're trying to keep it pretty tight for the time being.
Well, you have to be prepared for how much you guys are going to blow up after this podcast. So I hope. Clearly, this is going to change your whole world after this airs. No, it's cool. I'm excited. I want to get my hands in it and maybe put some in the salon and get some other folks using it too.
Yeah, I'll send you some stuff, and you can have a play with it. I mean, we did a brush too. We sold out of that. We're gonna have some more coming in.
Cool.
Um,
Yeah, I tried to order one this morning. It's gone.
yeah.
It's all right.
Anyways,
Well, you let me know.
yeah, I'll get you one.
But cool. That's great. I'm stoked you guys are doing that, and we'll keep an eye on it for sure. Uh, I was gonna ask you about, earlier you had mentioned that you had decided, living in Costa Rica, you had to be more picky about your jobs, the work that you took in. Would you say that this has raised the level of the jobs that you do? Has this had like a positive effect on your work? Technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, did you know that if you do this,
Yeah.
look
Oh
at that.
no. that's that's new for me. Okay, hold on. I made a coffee because, and we're still recording, so that's great. I thought we'd have to just
Okay, so that is classic Costa Rican style.
awesome. Hey, it keeps the interview interesting. It's fine.
That's been like the biggest challenge. Like, I'll be on like the difference is when you're in New York, your work is the most important thing. Everything has to be now, and it's serious, and you have to be on this call. And then like I'll go to jump on a call, and I'll be like, "Hey, good morning, everyone." Out.
Done. Yeah. That's the unfortunate part about this podcast is it has to be online. Everybody is everywhere all the time.
Yeah,
And so you're very much reliant on internet connection. And, I had this, well, not the second, the third podcast we did was Eugene, and they texted me about it. And I was obviously nervous. He's a legend, and we were like trying to find a time to do it, and it was probably 2 months of trying to organize it.
yeah,
And then you get one shot, and it may or may not work. And fortunately, his worked, and it was if you look at the footage, he's just obviously his own guy, but he's got, this much headspace. He's like at the bottom of the screen, and I wasn't about to try to get him. It was just, let's just, get it done.
Yeah.
So that one worked. I interviewed Vera Mai, you know,
Yeah.
and she was like really nervous about it, and we got going, and it was magic, just the best stuff. But the internet connection was so bad in Manchester that it was getting to the point that I couldn't understand her, so I could not converse.
Oh
And
no.
so I was like, we're gonna have to stop. Like, we got to redo this, and we still haven't got to get back on. So, it probably
Yeah.
won't be the most regular podcast ever because I'm like chasing people down all the time.
Yeah. It must be hard. I don't even remember what the question you asked me before we got cut
So,
off.
well, hopefully I can word it better. The question was basically, has you basically being more picky or saying no to more work because of your situation, has it perhaps elevated the level of jobs that you get access to, or the quality of the jobs that you do, or maybe you just being more picky about them?
I mean, to
That
to
makes
be
sense.
yeah, to be honest, but I think it's timing. I mean, when I started, I literally would do every single thing that came in front of me. I would rather be working than not, and I would take every editorial. I lived for editorial. It seemed like there was more editorial back then. Um, and I just was working all the time. I think because logistically it's harder for me to travel, and I'm trying to reduce the amount of flying. Um, I just choose not to. But it happened at a time in my life where I am okay with working less.
Right.
So because I'm focusing on the brand anyways. Um, and then it came at a time where I have some really cool clients, and I'm at a place in my career where I have some really good clients, which is cool. You know.
How do you look at your career? In light of, I'm sure you've had your, legendary hair mentors and idols, along the way. Do you feel like you've gotten there? Like, do you feel like you're ready for the next phase of your career?
I don't know. It's in my head. I still feel like I'm like the young kid, but I'm not. There's all these younger hairdressers doing really cool things. Um, it's also incredible to see how each generation it's getting more technically advanced with what they're doing. The tools and the wigs and everything's getting better and better and better and better. Um, yeah, I don't know. And there's so many different areas. I guess in my mind, I used to hold certain people up that I really admired. But now now I look at hairdressing just differently. There's just so many different paths you can go down, and it's um, there's there's so many different ways you can do it, and there's so many you can keep changing it up. You know. Um, yeah, I don't know. I've ticked some boxes that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
and
feel very grateful for where I am.
what are some of those boxes, if you don't mind sharing?
Um,
Even
I
if it's
mean,
not typical, just something that you held in a high regard.
I've been fortunate enough to work with the magazines at a time when they were like certain magazines at a time when they were really, I guess, revered as um, a place to get to. French Vogue, Italian Vogue, American Vogue. Um, I've got, I work with Nezza Manood a lot. They've always been my, top photographers that I absolutely love and adore. I feel very fortunate to get to work with them. I've worked with most of the photographers in the fashion industry that are alive today, and I feel like very grateful to be able to have done that, and to still see them today. I think it's awesome. Um, yeah, I mean, part of this as well is like you climb that ladder, but once you get up there, you need to stay. That's a hard part too. That's like half the battle in itself. and stay relevant. And I think that's the tricky part about this business or any business, is that, like, in a creative field, is that you're only as good as the last thing you did. And it's very hard because you get so addicted to it and you want more and more and more. And then, I'll be completely honest, it's really hard for me to go into show season and not just be like, all right, here we go. Let's do all four cities. Let's do
Yeah.
everything I can, like, because you just get so wrapped up into it. Um, and, but I also, doing less now, it means I focus more energy on those and I just enjoy it a little bit more, I think.
Yeah. So, it, are you? I mean, if you just take a scroll through your Instagram at the moment and like what you've been up to, I mean, there's no shortage of amazing clients and amazing work. I mean, all the stuff you've done with Inez and Vinud, it's unbelievable. It's super good. Uh, is there, because you were talking about staying relevant, right? Is that voice in your head a lot? Do you tend to think about that when you're going into like developing a concept with a designer or a photographer?
Not so much anymore.
Okay.
I think, years ago, uh, there's this hungriness, and maybe even levels of insecurity where you're trying to prove yourself constantly. And, I guess, uh, the longer you do it, you realize that you can have a job today and it's gone tomorrow, and it might have nothing to do with you at all. You know,
Sure.
it's just the way the industry works. I could be doing a show for a long time, and if the designer changes or something changes, like, they'll probably change the team. So you just don't take it personally and you move on. And there's always going to be other things. And the cool thing about hairdressing is there's always other things. There's always something else. You know. I
Yeah.
mean, one thing that I never ever put any effort into at all, because I just wasn't interested in it, was like celeb.
Mm,
Not that I'm against it in any way. My focus has always been on fashion, fashion, fashion. Um, and but then there's things that I enjoy. Like, I did that cover with Billie Eilish recently, which I didn't really think much of it. I mean, I put a wet wig on her head. Um, but then, like, it was fun. She liked it, got good response. I was happy with it. It was a good image. Michael Jensen did a great job.
yeah.
So, you know, I think, you did one with Anna as well. I know Anna from the past, and I think her story is very unique as well. And those people listening, that's one to go check out if you haven't seen it. But with Anna, she has a background working with Malcolm, and she worked on our team for a little bit. She's worked with, I mean, she's a fantastic hairdresser. She's had a really cool career, very strong hairdresser. But she had an opportunity to work with Lana Del Rey, and that, you know, for someone who was just fashion, 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 that might have been something that was not planned, but it was something that was actually really amazing for her career. You know?
Yeah. 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 It's interesting, because you said earlier you wanted to say yes to everything. You still want to say yes to everything, and being able to do that. And she mentioned that too. She was just like, "I'm going to do it," and it really kind of helped unfold the rest of her career. And being open, if you can be open
Yeah.
to these experiences and stuff, can lead you in a really unexpected direction. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, in this industry of just hairdressing and alone, is that, you might know exactly where you want to go, and that's good for you. But I think a big thing is just, like, when you see opportunity, to move on it fast and to take that opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. That episode is really good. I really enjoyed talking to Anna. She's so sweet, and it's so genuine, and her story is really great. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is. I mean, it's a privilege for me to be able to do this kind of interview. It's really cool. Uh, But that being said, I was curious about you know, in your career so far, and you've done amazing things. You've worked with really amazing, talented people. You know, creatives. You know, fashion, music, all those things. Who are some of the people who have like? I guess who are some of the people that have made an impression on you that helped propel you further? Does that make sense?
In the fashion world.
Sure, fashion or not. I mean, you could say personal, but more who you've worked with creatively over your career that really kind of like made you think maybe bigger or propelled you creatively where you were maybe particularly motivated after.
I think, we mentioned Inez and Benood earlier. I think that dynamic working with them is very special because when you work creatively with someone, there's kind of two ways it can go. The person you work with is making you feel lesser than or intimidated or insecure. And that's it's more of this kind of darker creative environment. When I work with Inez Benood, it's completely a exciting, collaborative, um, open, creative experience. And even if when I talk to them in the morning and they kind of tell me about the concept and I do it, even if I'm actually not kind of doing what they're thinking, like I go some other way, they're usually kind of like, oh, okay. And then they'll look at the situation and it ends up evolving into something special. And I think working with people like them is very very special and because it brings out the best in everybody instead of instilling fear or insecurity in people, and that usually doesn't bring out the best. Working with Tom Brown is the same way. Tom Brown is a pure artist. He's the and there's no limit of what you can do with him, and he brings his all the people together to create these shows which are proper like theatrical shows. And what he wants is you to bring something to the table. He wants your input on it, and that's like a very special thing.
Right, right. I think I did work with you on a couple Inez and Vanud shoots actually in LA
Yeah.
here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to go back and remember which ones they were. Um, so was it like that from day one with them? Was it very comfortable?
I mean, I was so intimidated when I first worked with them. It's a long story, but I mean, I've been fortunate. I've worked with a lot of different photographers of that level, but like, I love working with them. They also were the photographers at that level that really took a chance on me and changed my career overnight.
How did that
So,
link up? How did that become a thing?
I was hustling when I finished assisting. I moved to London. And I was hustling as much as you can. I was shooting like every tiny little picture in the front of French Vogue. I was really just doing anything I could. The editor in chief, Emmanuel Alt, saw a story I did with braids back then, and it was something I didn't even really think twice about. It was just a really quick little beauty story at the front of the magazine. She liked it, and she was doing a full issue of French Vogue with an Esma nude. So it was like 70 pages. So she put me forth as the option for hair, and Esmanu took a chance on me, and Emmanuel all took a chance on me. I went to Las Vegas. We spent 10 days shooting in Las Vegas, another 4 days in New York or something like that. And then when it came out, I had the 70-page story with an Esmanud, and then I had every tiny little picture in the magazine because already did those. So I did the whole issue,
That's
and
crazy.
the cover was Daria, and it was just it really changed my career overnight.
Wow. Okay, cool. So that was you were based in London at that point,
I was
and
based in London. I mean, I had a contract set up with L'Oreal. I mean,
Mhm.
it's been a long time, so I can say this. We ended up pulling out of the job with L'Oreal. They were going to do this whole thing with filming and stuff, and it was a big job. And at that time, it was good money for me. But when an option comes in like that with a photographer and a magazine at that level, you just drop everything. And I think we lied and said I had a passport problem, which is a typical agency lie.
Uh-huh.
And I went to Las Vegas, and it changed. Everything changed.
Man, amazing. I'm sure that that was a hard decision to no, maybe not, or
No,
maybe a scary decision. I don't know.
I think when I got into this from the very beginning, money was never the driving factor,
Yeah.
and I stress that because I think that if this is a creative industry, if you there's plenty of ways to make money being a hairdresser. But the people that have been extremely successful in the creative fashion side of this, most of them have, like I would say, all of them probably got into it not because they were making money. Doing 14 days of French Vogue probably cost me a lot of money doing that shoot.
Mhm.
Um, but that's what I lived for, and that to still today. I mean, people ask me, "Do I still do editorial?" I'm like, definitely. That's the stuff I live to do. That's the good stuff.
Yeah. What was your first taste of editorial? Because you came up in Northern California, right?
Yeah.
With Bumble, or
I
am I
well,
too
I
far
was
back?
I was working in San Francisco, and then I mean, I'll give you this is a funny story. I actually was doing apprenticeship at a salon in San Francisco. It was really awesome. San Francisco was a great place to learn to do hair. Um, I ended up going and failing my state boards test, which was funny. And that day, when I was driving home, I got a call from Bumble in New York that said, "Can you come out and do education for them?" Because I did a certain program in California where you apprentice and it takes longer, but you can get your license. But at that time, I'd already was on the floor. I was coloring, I was cutting, and Bumble
Oh, okay.
knew me because I'd already was going out and doing classes. I knew Howard, and they wanted me to come out and cut hair and teach classes. So it was
All of
funny.
this before you had your license. That's wild. Okay, cool.
And then I failed my state board because I was just being a total jerk, and I was an idiot. Failed it, and then I ended up packing up and moving to New York. I worked at Bumble for many years and started assisting out there as well. I basically moved to New York telling Bumble I wanted to teach for them only because I wanted to work on fashion. So I
Right.
kind of lied. And this is going to make me sound really like an asshole, but so I moved out there and just started assisting, and I became like Jimmy Paul's first assistant and Laurent Philpon's first assistant. And Bumble used to have someone walking around at the salon saying, "Okay, we need to collect everyone's license," because it was people were coming from all over the place. And I kept saying, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I'm trying to get it, but like California's so backed up and never had a license, and I still don't."
Man, yeah, that's amazing. That is so amazing. That's the most punk rock hair story I've ever heard.
Yeah. And the funny thing is I think at that time there was a lot of other people there that didn't have them either, people coming from overseas.
Right.
But the thing is I never stayed in the salon. I've always been working on set, you know. So
Hmm. So again, like why fashion though? Like if you were learning to do hair in San Francisco, what was the catalyst to that caught your eye to do editorial?
I guess editorial to me was the pinnacle of all creativeness with hairdressing. And it was kind of the thing to chase after that was impossible. To be honest, I really just wanted to work backstage on a show. And if I could get there, I would be happy. And then I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. I've always been obsessed with photography. I wanted to be a photographer. That connection with creating images was important to me. And yeah, I kind of being a hairdresser and working on these creative projects is I feel like I definitely have the dream job. I think that every time I go to work, that out of all the people on set, I definitely have the best job.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. When so you linked up with Jimmy, Paul, and Laurent. Was this one and then the other?
Yeah, I mean, I worked with other people as well. There was a guy named Max Pinnell that I was his assistant. He's an old school hairdresser. And then Jimmy was looking for a first assistant, so I worked with Jimmy for a couple of years, which was incredible. We worked with like Mizell, Irving Penn. Um, that was pretty cool. Then I got to work with Laurent Philpon as his first assistant after that. And you know, he's a fantastic, like super technical hairdresser, and that was a great experience as well. And then when I finished with those guys, I mean, at that point, I've had like almost 6 years of assisting, and my mentor said, actually, it was Howard McLaren, who you know. He's like, move to Paris or London, get out of here. And I was
Nice.
kind of like, what? And everyone thought I was crazy because I started working in New York already and things were going well. But you know, I moved to London. That was at that time, it was probably the best thing I ever did because creatively, it pushed me more than anything.
Is there a reason you landed in London instead of Paris at that point?
Yeah, the reason why I ended up in London was because I got mugged in Paris and I was kind of not feeling Paris at the moment.
That'll do it.
But I went to London and it was a good decision. I mean, London's an incredible place, especially that time. It was very creative. There's no money there. People are doing it purely because they love it. I mean, you look at like Eugene and the School of Eugene and all the people that have come from there. You know, Anna's from there. Like creatively, it is unmatched. It's a pretty cool place.
Wild. So would this have been? This was obviously mid early 2000s that you were there. I'm thinking,
Yeah,
or am I?
I moved to London 2007.
Okay. Did you find that there was much of a kind of a technical difference in the way that the British approached hairdressing rather than hair cutting? Did you have to adjust very much?
Yes. Haircuts I find so interesting. Like I could see a guy and I can tell you if it was a English hairdresser, a French hairdresser, or an American hairdresser. And it's just how they cut their weight line and how they over direct hair. I think it's fascinating. But you know, you have Sassoon and Tony and Guy, which are two incredible cutting houses, and then you have all the like Trevor Sorbet and like the things that have come out of that. Um, and so you have technical hairdressers. I think that you have really technical hairdressers, but then you have this raw creativity kind of punk attitude that is hard to describe and it's not something you can just like happen. I wanted to move to London for 6 months and I ended up staying almost 7 years.
Wow.
And it was, I think it's because people are doing things because they love it and not because of money. So they're not going to be safe. They're going to do what they think is cool. They're going to express themselves creatively. And you know, I think if you kind of look historically at the best hairdressers in history,
Mhm.
that's where they're coming from.
Yeah, yeah, and it seems like it historically kind of came out of there anyway, so it kind of makes
Yeah.
sense. Um, was there anyone in London who was pivotal for you as far as like maybe creatively or just getting your foot in the door?
Yeah, I think, you know, I was I moved from New York where things were pretty good when I left and I took all my savings and basically bought tons of hair.
Hmm.
I went straight to the hair shops and just like bought everything I needed to launch my career. And I was living with three other people in a warehouse. It was like really like starting over again. I was so broke and I remember a friend of mine, Alex Box. She's a makeup artist, and she did a book, and it was a book about makeup. But I would show up to these shoots, and we would do two models a day, just like two pictures, one on each girl. And she would tell me her idea, what she wanted to do, and I would just start pulling out art supplies and random things I've found. And it was a very organic process where I would usually make something on a head block and just put it on at the end. And to be in that kind of situation where there's no one saying, like, telling you what to do, it was amazing, but it was also scary because really you need to come to the table with what it was hard coming from New York where someone's constantly telling you exactly how they want that natural wave to be, and all of a sudden you're like gluing straws to a headpiece. So um, I thank her for pushing me that way. Some of the stuff we did, could be kind of terrible today, but it was creatively amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's ever a bad thing to exercise that muscle and be uncomfortable, and even to make something that's not great, it's still an
Yeah.
exercise.
It's like I've made so many terrible things. I've been on so many shoots where I make something weird, I put it on, and I just start laughing like how ridiculous it is.
That's great. That's great to hear. That's very encouraging to hear that James Pecis went through that. Did you and I know we've talked, you and I have had a few long format conversations, but was your family creative? Did you come from that world?
My mom's a social worker. My dad was law enforcement. Um, but I think that was more indicative of the time. My mom is a very creative person, but that generation, as we know, is really about getting the solid job with the retirement and the insurance. My older sister is actually quite a uh, well-established painter.
Mm.
She's probably one of the hottest contemporary painters right now in the
What's her
world.
name? If you don't mind
Hillary
sharing.
Hillary Petches.
Cool.
But she has always been a huge inspiration to me. When I started going to college, I wanted to be an artist, and I fell out of that world because I knew that she had a raw talent that was so beyond anything I could ever achieve. So, and I have a younger sibling as well who's incredibly talented and creative in that world too.
Wow. Okay. So it was obviously like in your genes. I mean, what stands out to me is like how like absolutely hyper focused you were on, like you saw the goal and you went for it kind of at all costs. And the fact that it landed on hair is interesting to me because I know you were playing music back then, why not music? Why didn't it end up there?
Um, because I got really lucky because the music industry dropped out. No, I mean, I've a lot of my friends still play music again. Um, I saw the potential in my friends who were incredible musicians, and you know, I I, I enjoyed playing, but I knew I just didn't have what they had. Um, to be honest, even with hairdressing, like I don't ever think that anything, it's not like I was born and I was creative with hairdressing or anything. I think I have work ethic. That's that's what it, and the perseverance to do something. I mean, like that could be if I'm digging a ditch or if I'm learning a haircut. Um, so I think I'm willing to get in for the long haul to make something happen. But I definitely was not that person that had natural talent. And sometimes I wonder, if it might be more of a struggle for people that it comes so naturally to them that there's nothing to push them further. Now, someone that you've had a conversation with that has both is Eugene.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, I think the creativity that comes out, like oozes out of that man's mind, and how he implements it into what he's doing is quite incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Man, that's a lot to unpack. It was there ever a point in your career where you were like, maybe I should have done this other thing, or it would have been cool to have done this. Like now that I know my work ethic and what I can do, was there ever a time where you were eyeballing something else?
No, but I think it's just because I don't really think that way in life. I mean, I I don't, I guess I don't look backwards on stuff. I mean there's some times where I'm like, man, I wish I would have spent my young years just traveling the world surfing. But then if I did that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So, it kind of, I feel, what part of that too is I work in a job where we get options every day that come and go.
Mhm.
Sometimes people option you for something and I say, yeah, yeah, I'll do it. And then like the option, they take it off for some reason, who knows? Um,
Right.
so I just don't think about that. I'm really just in the moment and forward.
Yeah. Cool. That's great. Yeah, you have as an observer. I mean, I really feel like artistically, creatively, uh, you really have like just an ideal hairdresser's, career. Like the package that you have created for yourself, like where you're at, it's really beautiful. I mean, your work's beautiful and consistent. Your clientele's fantastic. I mean, it's been awesome. It's really cool to watch. How are you on time? Are you
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
okay?
If you can
Well,
edit this out too, if there's some boring spots.
nah, I like the boring spots. That's good. No, this is all fantastic.
The funny thing is, it's like I'm actually cutting more hair where I
Hmm.
live here because just people want haircuts, and it's amazing the power of a haircut, um, and how easy it is to make people happy. But also when you realize that there's a lack of good haircuts and people want
Right.
cuts. Um, but I did some education last week in New York at a couple salons, and that's something I haven't done in a long time as well. And it was so fun because I get to be around other hairdressers who get excited about things that maybe seem not that big of a deal to me anymore, but they're cool things. So
Absolutely. Yeah, that you posted that reel of you cutting hair in what looks like Costa Rica, right?
yeah,
Um, I think that was like your last post, but man, it's great, and for you to say like you have work ethic and not necessarily a natural, affinity towards hair. I do think like the way you touch hair is it's indicative. It shows that that's your textile. That's something you should be doing, and I would love to see more haircuts from you.
yeah,
Yeah, it's good. It's really just nice to watch
yeah.
uh, how different people move through hair.
Oh, I love it. I mean, Howard was a huge influence on me. Howard McLaren with cutting, him and Raymond, his brother. Um, I think something that's really overlooked sometimes by session styling is the importance of haircuts. If you don't understand the haircut, how can you understand extension placement? How can you understand working with wigs? Like, there's a lot of people in the industry that don't really cut,
Mhm.
but I mean, there's some big wigs out there who don't cut and they have some help, but understanding cuts and understanding how hair falls and moves is critical.
Yeah. Would you say that so Jimmy Paul and Laurent were your two first first assistant jobs?
Yeah, I mean, I worked with Max Pinnell, who was before that, but I mean, this was kind of like, I mean, he used to carry a duffel bag to set. It was a lot different than how things have evolved.
Right.
Um, I think when I started working, I think all the assisting I did before Jimmy is really just to understand what you do as an assistant. It's
Totally.
kind of the grooming process to when I started working with Jimmy, it was a full-time thing with just
Totally.
him. Yeah.
What would you say would be maybe the biggest differences in assisting for Jimmy Paul and assisting for Laurent?
Oh, wow. Um, they're so different as hairdressers and really unique. And to be honest, I don't think I saw some of the value of what Jimmy was showing me and doing at the time until later in my career. Um, Jimmy has impeccable taste and knows how to um, tweak a tiny little thing and it makes the picture work. And he has so many years of experience, and he's worked with every major photographer alive and the ones that passed. And I think that I what I didn't realize when I was an assistant at that time was how you can't pay for that education. It's like a priceless place to be at, and um, I went into assisting with a bit of an ego, thinking that I was a little bit, big stuff hairdresser. And it was a bit of a shock working with Jimmy, going back to cleaning the cords of curling irons and doing some stuff that I thought, I wasn't going to do. But I am forever grateful to him and from what I learned from him and that experience for sure. Laurent was after Jimmy, and Laurent approaches hair very differently. It's very childlike and a lot of curiosity and um, a little bit more arts and crafts. So where we might do more like sets and beautiful brush outs and things with Jimmy, we might do a little bit more like conceptual headpieces with Laurent. And I was really inspired for him just being playful and curious and trying things.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah.
I did get to work with Laurent on a couple shows, and he was just like really sweet. I mean, just like and he was doing things that were very far above my technical ability at the
Yeah.
time, and now.
Yeah.
but but he was patient in showing the people on the team what to do, and it was really cool. I mean, it just
Yeah.
opens you up so much when somebody's like that to like really get something and really try it. So
A couple of things that I found with Laurent that I were really inspiring were that he would, when we would go to a test and say it was a difficult test for a show to figure out what the look was going to be, he wouldn't, there was no rush. There was no like, let's just make sure they're happy and get out of here. He would keep trying things and trying things and trying things, which in that situation, a lot of times you're just like, oh my gosh, let's just get this figured out and get out of here. That was inspiring. And the other thing that's interesting is in this business, like you travel a lot for jobs. And one thing Laurent would do is he would always stay afterwards and try to enjoy the culture of where he was at. And I never did that. I was always just like, okay, next job, next job, next job.
mhm.
Um, but I was inspired by how he how he did that.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's great. That's great. How has I mean, I think I knew you maybe before you started dating Kim, but she seemed like a creative powerhouse, and
yeah.
you two kind of coming together seemed like a really good fit. But how has being with her kind of inspired you? Has she helped take you to another level?
Oh, definitely. I mean, just before this call, she's constantly pushing me. And I think when you are doing things creatively, it's good to surround yourself with people that will push you out of your safe zone or like where you're at, because push you to go a bit further. I can get lazy, so she will, maybe not lazy, but I can be pushed.
Yeah,
So she's also just very good at what she does.
yeah,
So she is an expert in her field. um, Honestly, I can get bored looking at like 20 shades of gray to figure out colors, but she's good at that stuff. So
right, right. That's great. And so, like, like similar question, but has having a family like changed you on a creative level?
100%,
Yeah,
100%. I think and especially when I go onto an editorial or a creative job and I know the photographer has kids or the other people have kids, the difference is we probably won't be there till 2 in the morning reshooting things.
yeah,
Um, and that's just because I think I think you're a little bit more focused on what you're trying to do. There's
hmm
some clarity there. Um, Sometimes it's good to have those long times that you're like 2 in the morning, you're figuring things out. And sometimes it happens even if you have kids or not. But I think you're a little bit more practical and you're a little bit more to the point of like, well, let's do this. Let's get this going.
yeah,
Also, I think it makes you just be a little bit more of a humanitarian. I mean, if you're cleaning poop out of diapers, life gets a little bit more real, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've chosen not to take part in parenthood, my wife and I, but my wife's a nanny, you know.
Yeah.
So she's with kids, all the time. She loves them. She just doesn't have that like maternal desire,
Yeah.
which I never really had it either, or paternal desire or whatever. But one thing that I hear about often is like looking at things through your kids' eyes,
Yeah.
and I think that might very well be some part of like the complete package of being a human being, like it brings you back around in a way, and I that is something that I envy for people who have decided to be parents,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe. I
maybe
mean,
not.
yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, like this is a whole nother conversation, but anyone who has kids is gonna try to like sugarcoat it and make it sound great, but it's also like, I mean, yeah, it's there's great parts and it's tough too. you
There's
know?
also poop in diapers.
Yeah, it just depends. Like there's so many ways to cook an egg, You asked me earlier about living here and stuff like that, and it would I want to live here 10 years ago when I was at the, really pushing it with my career? No way. This would absolutely not happen. 10 years ago, I also, I told my wife originally I didn't want to have a kid either because like my focus was my work. Super selfish. And I'm like, anyone listening to this is gonna be like, dude, that dude's an asshole. But like that was really even when I met my wife, this sounds screwed up, but I told her, I said, my work comes first, like I'm not gonna sacrifice anything else for that.
Right.
And my tune, I've changed a lot since then. But at the time, that was my very selfish way of doing things.
Do you
So
think you would have arrived at the same place if you hadn't have been that selfish at that point?
probably not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't go to my sister's. I mean, this is the reality of it too. I mean, I didn't go to my sister's wedding. I missed funerals. I missed graduations. Um, people just wouldn't invite me to things because they know I probably wouldn't go. Um, and I'm not like complaining. That was the reality. I mean, really, it was like 120%, 24/7. So
Would it be your bet that most people at your level did it the same way?
probably, yeah.
It's really interesting.
I think so. I mean that raises even the question with it's very, very difficult for women in the industry to have a kid and to get to a higher position. There has been a few people like Diane Kindle, Lisa Butler, and they've had children, but they've made some huge sacrifices too. And I'm not saying that's okay. I think it's not good.
Right.
Um, but it is a very, very, very cutthroat industry.
Mm,
When COVID happened, I wasn't able to get to Paris to do shows one season, and I lost my shows.
man.
So, and these are people I worked with for a long time, but one season missed, you're out. I mean, this is getting like deeper, but even when my wife and I talked about having a kid, I was really hoping it would not conflict with show schedules
Right.
because I had been working years building up my team and doing these shows that happen twice a year. And I have a whole month that I'm required to be there. You can't miss it or you're out. Um, and he was born in December, so it worked out. But yeah, I mean, this is the train of thought that I had. I mean, it's a lot different now, um, but that's how it was.
Do you think it is a lot different now for hairdressers, like in general?
I think it's different for me now.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, my priorities are different now.
Would you give a young hairdresser the advice to be kind of that cutthroat about their career?
Yeah, if that's what they want.
Yeah.
But most people don't want to give that up, you know? But if it depends on where you want to go. I mean, there's a lot of things that have changed in this business where, um, there's just the magazines are different, the creative outlets are different. But if that's what you want to do, if that's your goal, then, you have to be willing to give it all in, you know.
Mhm.
But then there's other ways to do it too. You don't have to do that. And this and also, like I said, you can be the best of the best of the best, and then a season passes and you're out.
Mhm.
You know.
Mhm.
Here's I'll leave you with this thought. I was working with one of the girls on my team, who's a fantastic hairdresser and super creative, like really really creative. And she was asking me like people that inspired me back when I started. And to me, one of the number one people comes to my mind is Julian Dees.
Mhm.
I've always been the huge fan. I love what he does. But Julian doesn't really have like a social presence today, and he doesn't do much today. But this hairdresser who I thought would know who he was, of course, had no clue who he was, which to me was like a big moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a person who has set the stage for so many, for the Laurents and for all these other creative people, and no one knows who he is.
Yeah,
I shouldn't say no one knows. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will
for
know who
sure.
he is.
Yeah, a
But
lot of people do.
I was very surprised because this
Yeah.
hairdresser wasn't super young either.
Well, it just shows you that there can easily be a whole generation of people who don't know who you are. Even if you're a legend, that
Yeah.
that is how it is. I think that there are ways to combat that now. I think you're doing a good job of that too. But yeah, it's a terrifying prospect for some people.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I've really enjoyed my career. I've gotten to work with amazing people, travel, see some really cool things. I'm still doing it. I'm thankful for that. Um, but you know what? When you pass by, there's going to be someone else, something else going on, and that's okay.